Okay. Hello. I guess I got to get really close today. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to take this off. Today, we gather to celebrate Laurel, our mentor, colleague, aunt, sister, and dear friend. However, Laurel was so much more than that. To me, as a child, she was invincible, fashionable, and a window to the outside world. My first memory with Laurel was sitting at a truck stop in Lakota, North Dakota, which was the halfway point between the farm and Grand Forks, where my parents dropped me off to meet her so I could spend the week at her house. Instead of getting on the road, we passed the afternoon sitting in the booth, eating ice cream and reading Winnie the Pooh, a book that still holds a place on my shelf today. Some of you may not know this, but when I was 6 years old, I was shot in the eye with a BB gun and spent the summer with patches over both eyes. I still remember the day the patches came off and seeing Laurel coming down the road in her VW convertible. Scarf blowing in the wind, big sunglasses, and chunky bracelets about her wrist. She had arrived with 2 presents to celebrate the occasion: a new bike and a 20-gauge Winchester youth shotgun. I guess it was her way of telling me it's time to get back on the bike. That winter, she took me to go see my first movie, A Christmas Story, a film about a kid getting his eye shot out with a BB gun. Each summer, Laurel would enroll me at College for Kids here on UND campus, where I would get to take classes in aviation, fishing, geology, and most of all, I would wander, lost, until her dear receptionist, Elaine, would find me and get me to where I needed to be. As the years went by, we began to fly to New York together, where we would spend springs going about the town, getting on a boat, touring Manhattan Island, going to see plays that would shock her friends that she'd tell them that she took me to. And on Easter Day, we would get in a taxi and drive up and down the boulevards so that we could see and smell the new tulips that had just bloomed. Right afterwards, we would always take in the service at St. Patrick's Cathedral just to listen to the singing. Laurel's caring still extended well beyond the family. For Christmas, she would always make sure to give the lady at the grocery store a holiday card with a $100 bill for helping her carry her groceries in. She would buy artist paintings, even though there wasn't an inch left on her wall to hang another one. And her reasoning was, well, they might just need it. Even if she couldn't afford to do it, she would make payments over the year. As a boss, Laurel would often tell her staff, when in doubt, err on the side of generosity. Laurel was small but mighty. She was generous, yet uncompromising when it came to quality. Laurel was comical, but she could write a poem that would make your eyes well up and burn an image in your mind. If you knew Laurel, you knew she often shied from attention in favor of the behind-the-scenes work. I don't know if she would want the spotlight on her today, but if I had to guess, today would not be about her, but rather about an artist she found, a new writer she recently discovered, the commissioning of a new musical work, or the champion of someone fighting for human rights across the globe. Laurel left town every year before her birthday, so staff wouldn't throw a party or make a fuss. When she retired, I suggested we start the Laurel Reuters Directors Fund to raise money in her name for causes that were important to her. Her immediate response was, I don't need anything named after me. She only relented when I said, Laurel, this isn't about you. This is about the institution you spent 50 years of your life building. She was most pleased when the first gift for $200,000 came in from the Landon Foundation. At her retirement party in the museum's newly designed gardens, Laurel wanted the invite to read, "Come celebrate the new wild garden," in honor of her late friend, Lois Wild, who helped fund the project. That was just the type of person that she was. To this day, I'm in awe of Laurel's impact around the world. Recently, in New York, I stopped into a gallery to introduce myself. And as I approached the young lady sitting at the front desk, I said, "Hello, I'm Matthew Wallace, the director of the North Dakota Museum of Art." Before I could say another word, from the back room, I heard someone yell, "Are you Laurel Reuter's son?" The gallery owner came out, and we talked for the next hour. Today, we gather to celebrate Laurel, the woman who came from Tokyo, North Dakota, on the Spirit Lake Reservation, but went on to impact countless artists, writers, musicians, and friends from Beijing, Berlin, Paris, and New York. We come together to celebrate the woman the New York Times art critic Holland Carter praised as the architect behind the, quote, "the greatest exhibition, political or otherwise, in New York that year." We come to celebrate the person who thought it was just important for a kid in Crosby, North Dakota, to have access to art as a child here in Grand Forks. So she started the museum's Rural Arts Initiative to take exhibitions to rural communities throughout the state. On behalf of the family and the staff here at the museum, I would like to thank each and every one of you for being here today and to celebrate this tremendous life that was Laurel, and to acknowledge the countless people that could not be here in person but are joining us today via the live stream. It could not be possible to do justice to the life and legacy here of Laurel here today, but I wish to finish by saying you are all very extremely important to her, both professionally and personally, and that she is probably looking down to this today saying, "Look, I helped raise that kid," or "I taught that kid how to make a proper quiche," or "Look how well the museum is doing today." Thank you all for coming here and helping us to celebrate Laurel's tremendous life. As you all know her, she would be very, very pleased. So after the program, please stick around. We're going to have a reception with some food and drinks. Make sure you sign the guest book. And there will be a moment in the program where if anybody has something to say about Laurel, that we would welcome you up to do that.
Someday I'm going to grow up and be as big as Matt, but not now. Welcome, as Matt has already said. We're flattered to have you here to join us. Thank you for being here to celebrate Laurel, her legacy. As the program has already said, I'm Jim Wallace, and I've had the real pleasure in life of a great adventure, and the great adventure is being Laurel's brother. That in itself is an adventure. We have another brother here, our brother Russell, in the second row, and he and I have gone through that adventure together. Laurel was born, as you know from the obituary, October 17th, 1943. She was the only girl amongst 4 boys. Initially, I'm sure that she was tormented by her, I said 4 boys, 3 boys, there were 4 of us. She was the only girl amongst 3 boys, and initially, I'm sure she was tormented by the 3 of us. Later, we kind of rejoiced in we could kind of protect her and look after her. Health and mobility were an issue for Laurel. There were lifelong challenges with her hips that time couldn't correct, and surgery worked at. And when Laurel was 10, she underwent a very severe surgery. When it was completed, she spent most of a very hot North Dakota summer with a cast from kind of shoulder to mid-calf. So for that, it was not a very pleasant summer. Over the years, multiple surgeries followed. The limp that resulted was always a frustration to Laurel, but she absolutely refused to let it ever slow her down or to stop her. The cold weather of North Dakota it was a challenge to her health and made her health conditions even worse. Once in a while, I'd call her and pester her a little bit and say, Laurel, I know of warmer places. And she would kind of grunt and grumble, and we'd move on to a different topic. She would say, this is my home. These are my people. Would be her comment. North Dakota wasn't just a place where Laurel lived. It was a place that was Laurel's identity. It was totally her identity. Laurel was a mentor. She was an aunt. She was a champion of learning. She delighted in her nieces and nephews. She took them on trips, brought them to museums, filled their shelves with books, encouraged their academic pursuits with both enthusiasm and resources. She deeply believed in education, but even more seriously, she believed in curiosity. Some of our family are here. You might remember we had a family reunion in 2012, and it was one of the events was right here in this room. We had family here from Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Oregon, and of course North Dakota. We, the family, sat in a semicircle, and Laurel was in the front of that semicircle, and she spoke softly, humbly, but with a great authority. She talked about her art. She spoke about her personal journey, and her dreams, what she saw in the future for her and for the museum. For over an hour, probably 30 of us in our extended family kind of sat in awe. The older generation looked at it, and we began to realize it was one of those rare moments when you realize you're witnessing someone doing exactly what they were put on this earth to do. Freedom was one of Laurel's lifelong accomplishments. Freedom in every form was essential to Laurel. Freedom to speak, to write, to think, travel. She despised anything that in any way or shape or form would constrict her freedom. Let me digress for a moment. In the cold glare of reality, Laurel was a terrible driver. Some of you may have understood this, but driving was a part of her freedom, so I'm not digressing too far. And she was not about to give up driving. And that leads us to what became in the family to be known as the famous Coke truck incident. By Coke truck, you've seen the red trucks, Coca-Cola products being delivered about town. Well, on one of her ventures, and I think she must have had a dozen of them, those EOS Volkswagens, most of them were convertibles, as Matt has already said. And she'd arrive with hair askew and a scarf flying in the wind. It almost was like a Snoopy Dog picture. But this particular incident, Laurel and the Coke truck tried to occupy the same space at the same time. It was not a good plan. And there was endless debate in the family about who was to blame for this, and no discussion, no conclusion was ever reached. But it created a new family greeting. Every time Laurel would show up at one of the family affairs, she would invariably be greeted with, "Hey, Laurel, did you run over any Coke trucks on the way here?" You can kind of imagine there would be this growl by those that knew her well. There'd be a ladylike, but it was really disdain. It was, even though it was ladylike. And I'm sure she muttered under her breath, "I shall never dignify such remarks with a response." And life went on. That was Laurel. A friend once said to me, "Hey, Jim Wallace, I always thought you were the stubbornest man on earth, and then I met your sister." So, in our family, we have an expression. We consider it personal to our family. We don't consider it to make us any better than anybody else. But our expression within our family is, we're Wallaces, we don't quit. And that's been an expression, I know it's gone from the first generation to the second generation, and now the third generation is practicing it in our family. And I hope that expression, we are Wallaces, we don't quit, by now they have different names, but I would love to see that go on to the fourth and subsequent generations. Laurel embodied that spirit completely. She and I, as poor, broken down, tired college students, both of us paying our way through school. Laurel here at UND studying something du jour, whatever took her interest that particular semester. She used to regale me that you're going to be the most boring brother I could have because I was 90 miles up the road or whatever it is, trying to calculate my way through a bachelor's of engineering offhand. And she always persisted, and then we still hear it in the family. There's a 60s kind of song that says, houses built in a ticky-tack and all in a row. And that was her prediction would be my future for the rest of my life. So, but in spite of that, we worked our way through school. We would cross paths, occasionally complain about whatever it was, but we'd always part saying, we're never going to quit. We're going to finish this. I finished mine. She finished hers a year later, and life went on. Life was good. Hers was a resolve, and it went for her entire life. A refusal to quit, a determination to follow what she believed in, and Laurel was good at that. If we could divide Laurel's work into two major parts, and I thought it was well said, bringing the world to the prairie, and then bringing the prairie to the world. And I felt that really did describe Laurel's life. Today I would suggest Laurel's story is profound, not only because of where she came from, but because of what she made possible. She began, and those of you who have read the obituary already know this, a tiny art gallery, and I guess it was a student union, probably doesn't exist here anymore. She had no staff, she had no budget, and she certainly had no art credentials at that point in time. She had her own eye, her own courage, and the belief that art belongs to everybody. That was Laurel's thoughts. She brought the world to the prairie. Artists from Chile, Cuba, Japan, Germany, South Africa, and I'm sure well beyond in many places, came here. She honored native voices long before they were expected, and certainly long before it was fashionable to honor native voices. She chose work that told the truth, even when the truth was difficult, uncomfortable, painful. She did not hesitate to go into those areas. She also brought the prairie to the world. She elevated North Dakota's voice, its culture, and its people onto an international stage. But more than exhibitions, Laurel shaped lives, and she took more pleasure in shaping lives than she did in many other things that she'd done. She welcomed students that didn't yet grasp what art could be. She encouraged local artists who suddenly realized that their stories counted. And she gave rural communities, as Matt has already referenced, she gave rural communities, often overlooked, a seat at the table with the exhibitions they did. She had a rare gift. She was fiercely intellectual. She was paired with gentle humor. She was sharp, she was thoughtful, she was demanding, and yet she was humble all at once. And she had that rare ability to be self-deprecating. She could laugh at herself, and I always looked at that and said, man, if I could be Laurel, I don't know if I want to be Laurel, but I'd like to be self-deprecating, and I sure would like to learn to write like she could write. But she had a real skill that way. If I might digress for a moment, knowing there's only two of us here, my brother Russell and myself that are now her immediate family, I would like to express appreciation first to Matt and Mara. All of you, I'm sure, know who they are, and I would like to say thank you to them because they took the time to overlook Laurel's affairs and make sure she was well cared for. And I'd also like to thank Melissa Miller, and I'm going to blow this, Sarah, Mara, Sarah, and I apologize, that is very rude of me, I apologize. Sarah Parker, who attended to Laurel each and every day. They're the people, and she didn't want to eat, took the time to provide, not only do that, but encourage her. And so the four of you, and particularly the two young ladies, that they were not family, they had no reason, and they devoted lives, and I thank you for that. North Dakota, let's get closer here. North Dakota Museum Art is not just a building offhand. It's a building that Laurel helped shape. It's a live embodiment of what she believed, that art carries human history. Laurel's absence is profound, and you can see me get a bit teary-eyed, perhaps, and her absence, she will be missed. Her absence is profound, but so is her imprint is profound. We remember her in the quiet of this gallery. Whenever I'd come back to North Dakota from wherever we've lived over the years, I'd love to come here and just wander by myself. It's profound in the boldness of new exhibitions and the courage of basically choosing meaning over approval. Laurel was never big into approval. She was kind of always on the edge of something, and it was kind of my observation that she was always right. So, thinking of Laurel, humble, humorous, self-deprecating, determined, stubborn, driven, caring, curious, adventure, opinionated. Well, she was sure opinionated. I'm sure some of you here can understand. Laurel had her opinions. Choose the adjective you prefer, because I believe it's my opinion that everyone described Laurel. So, Laurel spent her entire life bringing meaning to others. We're privileged to know her, privileged to learn from her. We're privileged to love her. Laurel Jean Wallace Reuter, may you rest in peace. May your life's work continue to inspire and challenge people, and may it bring meaning to those who follow. And I am indeed privileged to have Laurel as a sister. I think my brother Russell feels the same. And I thank you. We're flattered and we're honored that you would all come here today to remember her. And with that, I'll turn the podium to the next speaker.
What extraordinary memories we share of a woman who truly left her mark on this world with her fierce spirit, sharp wit, and unmatched zest for life. A woman whose love and warmth not only touch those near and far, but worldwide. As we remember Laurel, let us carry forward her legacy of love, laughter, the fine arts, and her ability to install lifelong memories in which she had certainly left in me. For those that don't know me, my name is Melissa Miller, and I'd like to share some of my most cherished memories with Laurel. For me, she was more than a friend. She was a confidant, a mentor, and my sense of endless joy for the last 10 years. In 2015, I took on the role of doing a weekly cleaning of her home. The first few years, we only crossed paths as I arrived and she was making her daily trek to work, cane and fancy hat always on point. As time went on, with the help of my dear friend Sarah and I, we became her new norm. It was in my daily visits where I learned how to precisely make the best brew of coffee, which is cream, a splash of coffee, and a good pour of Bailey's. It was in the kitchen where our hearts grew fonder, kneading the dough of her secret bulgur wheat bread recipe, or trying to replicate Sonia's famous yellow cake, is when we made a promise together. I said, Laurel, I will never let you go to one of those old folks' homes. Laurel wanted to be in her home with Kat, creatively named Kat, surrounded by her astonishing art and book collection. Our conversation was deep and full of laughter that day as we giggled at the term old folks' home and decided to call it the warehouse instead. On days when she had a request for an extra coffee refill, or more Baileys, or a new ironed pillowcase, she would jokingly say, "Now don't send me to the warehouse." The kitchen is also where I learned that, in Laurel's words, everyone deserves to use paper towels like they are rich. Our daily walks were another cherished tradition, or should I say, I walked and she rode first class in the wheelchair. One day we decided to give her first class ride a name, and after listing a handful of people who we would rather prefer to run over with the wheelchair, we decided it'd be best to call it her wheelbarrow. I felt that preserved her pride and added extra laughter into our day as we pictured how funny that would be. Laurel had the ability to find beauty in every step we strolled, I remember the day she confessed her dislike in maroon-colored lilies. Such a small detail, yet it was emblematic of her candid nature. Laurel's playful spirit shone through as we labeled ourselves secret agents, as we would often and quickly walk by the museum to make sure it was looking up to par. Jenny, your house was on the route too, and she was very pleased by your new patio. It was important to keep life's simple pleasures a present thing for her, as she did for me, in giving me fashion advice, as she once told me my earrings were barbaric. She had strong opinions about such things. One day, after giving her a foot bath, she was looking down at me on the floor and she said, "Well, I know you didn't work off your ass today, only your knees." Whether it was baking expired cake boxes just to smell and feel the warm house, enjoying the concerts and art shows at the museum together, our time was always a delightful experience. We spent our days watching Animal Planet or taking a drive through the scenic countryside with butterscotch sundaes in hand. One drive in particular comes to mind when she asked to see my garden. I was a bit nervous, to say the least, and as her tiny face was peeking over my window, I drove straight through the backyard to give her the best view possible. My unofficial garden coach gave me suggestions on what to plant next and, of course, what not to do. Thankfully, I had no maroon-colored lilies. Laurel's love ran deep for my 3 boys, especially my 11-year-old Cash. He would visit weekly and play the piano for her, while my older boys took great pride in doing her lawn care and enjoyed stopping in to say hello. In 2024, Laurel and I traveled to Santa Fe together, where she jokingly called it our business trip to those who wondered where our travels were taking us. If I learned one thing from that trip, it was that pushing a wheelbarrow 21 miles through the cultured cobblestone sidewalks was not an easy task, especially when her curiosity that afternoon led us into the tequila bar. She would diligently direct me through the city, pointing her cane, stating, "Canyon Road, 2 blocks ahead." And I was certain I was adding on another 10,000 steps that day, but lo and behold, there was Canyon Road. We grabbed some spring rolls and sweets and strolled back to our room, where she shared stories of her past and insisted that I called the front desk to see who made the textiles that lined the hotel lobby. Laurel, you lived your life honorably, wrapped in your favorite wool sweater, surrounded by those that you loved. You once noted, "When all my chickens have left the coop, it's time to go home." I want to offer you all comfort and peace today, and although she is no longer with us, her legacy will live on in the kindness she showed, the lessons she taught, and the love she gave so freely. Her life was a gift to us all, and that gift will never fade. In the words of Maya Angelou, people will forget what you said, people will forget what you did, but people will not forget how you made them feel. Laurel made us feel loved, valued, and cherished, and may we carry that love forward. Thank you.
Did you realize the receipt on this young lady just popped up? A handbar. No, I'm gonna. I can't step up on a horse much anymore, but anyway. Yes, it's a nice day out there. It is late in the season. I am wearing a straw hat. Well, I always wear a hat. It's my security blanket. Laurel used to laugh at me when I'd come in December with the straw hat on. She said, "It's time for your felt hat," and she'd laugh, and I'd say, "Yeah, Laurel, I'm an optimist." And especially today, I come here today thinking the straw hat, hopefully it's not too inappropriate. Who do I bump into right off the bat but Greg Vettel in a Hawaiian short sleeve shirt? So, when Matt asked me
if I would speak at this remembrance for Laurel. I was honored, of course, and of course I said yes. I owed her so much. First and foremost, her friendship of over 50 years. Then, of course, her professional encouragement and help. She recommended and promoted my work to curators and directors regionally and nationally. I owe a big part of my career exhibiting in the southwest part of the United States to recommendations from her to gallery directors like Suzanne Brown and other gallery directors down there. And I thought about Laurel, how best do I speak of her life, her accomplishments? How best to sum it up without going into the many wonderful stories and instances that my wife, Becky, and I had with her, such as the many days she stayed with us in Minot when she had to vacate Grand Forks because of the flood. I pondered what, in a word, best sums up Laurel. And the word that came to mind first and foremost was fierce. Laurel was fierce. Not in a scary way, but fierce in a way that goes beyond persistent, beyond determined. Many people, many artists are persistent and determined. That, understandably, is what is required. But Laurel's vision and her focus was fierce in a way that was required, what was demanded to build an institution like this. Laurel was determined and persistent, and she was also fiercely successful. She was greatly respected for what she accomplished locally and internationally. We all know that. But beyond respect, Laurel was loved by family, by friends, and artists of all disciplines. For what she gave us, the North Dakota Museum of Art, Matt Wallace. So, thank you, Laurel.
I know you were hoping the next speaker would be short. I'm going to read you a poem that Laurel wrote called The Land of Sky. We come from the flat, frozen, shimmering plains of the far north, my friend and I. We have lived with a wind so fierce and so constant that only in moments of stillness do we remember its presence. We know the seasons as times of abrupt and singing change, and we are addicted to change, this friend and I. We measure all storms against the storms of childhood, the blinding blizzards of winter when neighbors died, and we were forced indoors to play, the towering tornadoes of summer which frightened our mothers, but allowed us to walk on shining fields of hail for a moment. The miserable snort of early spring when the snow and the dirt did battle and we hid. The black dust of open fields beaten by the prevailing westerlies for days and days and days. Burning eyes, parched throats, deadened spirits. Yes, we measure all storms against the storms of our childhood, this friend and I. Growing up as we did on that flat black valley of the Red River of the North, we learned to live within the landscape of the sky. The ground existed only under our feet. We breathed sky. No hills, no distant markers, only an occasional tree. Earthbound, we lived in a world of sky, this friend and I. Weather schools our senses, but sky kept us company. Weather shaped our vision, but sky taught us to see. Today, adults abroad in a larger world, we go on, longing for an architecture of earth and sky, this friend and I.
I first met Laurel when I was a small child, but in my late 20s, she reached out to me. She brought me into this part of her world and challenged me to treat flowers as art. Thank you for this privilege and this honor to read this poem by Robert Lewis, professor of English here at the university and a dear friend, as we celebrate the life of this visionary woman. The Weaver. This lady could spell a little and write a little, and she had an eye. Little could we know she was a weaver bird, breathing little lives over the world, migratory, nesting here and there, a human twig from Tucson, twining round a Manhattan, in and out a John and a Joanna. Weaving, weave, you wove us, enlarging this nest of the world, Australia, Dakota, and Mexico, out to the Empyrean, making us larger than we knew, showing us our shine. Only little threads can net design. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. That was beautiful. My name is John Carl Rogers. I've known Laurel since the mid-'70s when I was about 6. My dad was the dean of the College of Fine Arts, the founding dean, and he, along with John Little, who started the the Writers' Conference, later I think Bob Lewis took over that helm, fought and were fierce about bringing art, creativity, beauty to the Red River Valley. And Laurel always remembered me as that little kid running around the gallery and the art department. So yeah, we've had a good long friendship, intersected many times as we moved away, and I started coming back. And I started coming back here mostly in 2011. My mother had passed away, and as we do, I was trucking around the United States with her ashes in my backpack, having celebrations of life in various places before finally laying her to rest with my father in Quantico National Cemetery. And so one March afternoon, with an impending blizzard, I came over because she had organized a sand mandala to be made here in the, probably I think it was the other gallery. And so there was this dedication ceremony, and there was these monks, Tibetan monks with these clackers and this horn and all this other stuff. And so I was like, well, that's interesting. That's kind of cool. So I stopped by the museum, and just one of those things that Laurel pulled off. Just why not? Why not? Let's have a sand mandala and get some Tibetan monks to make this beautiful thing in this wonderful place. And so I came over and experienced that. Went downstairs to find Laurel afterwards. She was in her office. And, she said, condolences. I'm sorry to hear about your mom and blah, blah, blah. And is that her calling? I guess so. And I said, yeah, I'm thinking about buying a place out here. And she said, just last year, Marjorie McCann, one of our wonderful supporters, left this house to the museum. And it's going to be an artist-in-residence house. Why don't you be the first artist, and you can spend some time looking for a place? And I said, okay. And she said, let's go out there right now. I said, okay. And so we jumped in that little black Jetta, and we blazed out there, north of Larimore to McCann. And she handed me the keys. She's like, I don't want to get out. So I ran inside, looked around the kitchen. I was expecting this creaky old farmhouse. No, this place is beautiful. I looked in the kitchen. My boots are all wet from the snow that is already falling. And I, sort of peeked into the living room. This wonderful pearly light was cascading in, that kind of light right when the snow is starting to fall, that pearly white light. And I was like, wow, oh my God, yeah. Came back out, jumped in the car, got stuck in the snow. All right, jump out, push Laurel out. We're getting out of here, woof. And we're coming back from McCann, driving down Highway 2. And that, like, when the snow's really starting to fall and you feel like you're going light speed, about to go light speed, that was happening. But we're brainstorming. We're like, wow, this could happen, and this could happen, this could happen. And so, I came back in May, and I had some time there, and we initiated the program, and with a lot of help from a lot of other people, of course. And so we had our first run of artists through that year, and I think a couple other people came in. And then in October, I came back, and she said, I got a lot going on. Why don't you be the assistant director of the Artist in Residence program? And I said, I want to be the deputy director, because that sounds cooler. And I want May to myself every year, and I want business cards and a badge that says deputy. And she said, okay, but get your own damn badge, kid. And so, two things. One, she knew that I was grieving. My dad had passed away a few years earlier, and this was it was a hard time, for me. And so she gave me a place to land, but she also knew that I would get hooked on the place. She knew that I might find a place there where I could be a, sort of half-assed caretaker, and with a lot of help, again, from Matt and others, and, Rich McGarren has sort of stepped in, in these later years as a much better plumber than I ever aspired to be, and a friend, of course, and great supporter. And so I say those two things as kind of a segue into what I've written. And the word architect and architecture has already been mentioned, and I think it's appropriate. I think it's very appropriate. Laurel was an architect. She built the museum with the elements at hand: place, art, and the people she gathered around her. She had a keen eye for art, an even keener eye for who could make a specific part of this beautiful machine hum. She brought Greg Vettel in early on to literally build the elements which supported her mission of bringing art, arcing from the global to the local to the Red River Valley. She slowly gathered around her the thousands of works which make up the collection and the trusted crew who would support her vision. A place of play, the women's gymnasium, would be transformed into a place of serious play and contemplation. The crew I've known for the 14 years I've been involved with the museum, including Danny, logging the endless stream of work, Sung-Yi coordinating the day-to-day, Brian Loftus, Matt Anderson, focusing programs and outreach, Brad and Renee juggling the books, and Brian Paulson faithfully bicycling over at the end of each install to lend his careful lettering to the walls, and Matt of many hats, who now mans the helm. There are so many others from the mid-'70s that she gathered around, and this small tribute to them is a large tribute to her. But what made the museum so successful is that all of this was guided by a compassion for a love of people. The art she chose was exciting, often funny, but always tender. Naked in its humanity. The rawness of Frank Sampson's work, Margaret Wall Romano's elegant painting, Tim Schounton's rambunctious encaustics, and Barton Benish's profane and profound pieces, and of course the bare innocence of Emily Lundy's work. She coalesced the grieving power of the work in the disappeared into a show, which eventually traveled to many of those countries affected. She went to Iceland and gathered up the lean beauty of the artists there. The list goes on and on. The first show I remember seeing as a kid was an installation in the Student Union by some old gentleman from Montana, I believe, who turned branches into fantastic figures with bottle-top eyes and hauntingly human gestures. This made an impression. All of the shows leave an impression, an imprint on us, reminding us to be human, to salute beauty, to be tender. She wove together all of these beautiful humans in this building with its stunning shifting light and the art to build a place where the walls are always singing. She didn't just bring art to the Red River Valley, and forgive me, I'm going to get corny here. She brought heart. She did it with some amazing people. And she did it quietly and elegantly and with a sense of purpose, guided by a generous spirit as big as the North Dakota sky. Thank you, Laurel. Thank you so much.
Right now, we're going to take and open this up. If anybody has any short stories they would like to share about Laurel, I know a few people in the crowd will be reading some brief statements from artists who could not be here with us today. So with that, if you have something, maybe start coming around this way and please share your thoughts or favorite happenings with Laurel.
All right, Jim, I'll do my best. I'm representing Jim Dow from Belmont, Massachusetts. Jim has been a longtime friend of Laurel's, a fabulous co-conspirator in all things beautiful, and he sent some words today. He can't be here, so Jim, here you go. As a once ignorant coastal type, I thought of North Dakota as flyover country. Then when I was 40, I got a phone call from Laurel Reuter, and soon was in Grand Forks in January. It was 70 degrees, and 2 days later, it was near zero and stayed so far at least a fortnight. No matter, I was hooked. In that time, she sent me to photograph such wonders as a 40-foot-high wooden cactus, the workshop of a farmer who built a theme park on a spread and DJ'd a polka show, a faded mural of martini glasses on the windswept wall of a prairie pub, and many, many other things. As a result, North Dakota became a destination, a place I returned to many times over the ensuing 40 years. Laurel and I did shows together, published a book, and enjoyed each other's company. I brought my family and my friends to meet her and to travel all over the state, and I will treasure that for the rest of my life. There are visionaries and facilitators. The former anticipates, conceptualizes, and inspires. The latter makes stuff happen. It is rare that one individual can do both. Laurel possessed banquet servings and each attribute and shared the bounty with everyone she met. Imagine being able to imagine and then make it possible an installation containing, in the words of a reviewer, quote, a blackened human toe, a giant hourglass holding the mingled ashes of two, the rear artist's friends, partners who died of AIDS, a gallstone removed from his friend Larry Heitmann, the actor, and a stuffed giraffe's head, unquote. Or to conceive of, curate, acquire, and exhibit a 3-year traveling show on the disappeared across Latin America. That, according to another critic, was, quote, a total immersion, emotional experience, an on-the-road exhibition from a small museum in the Midwest, the most potent show of contemporary art, political or otherwise, in New York City. That was Laurel. She gave us all so much, so many times, and in so many ways. Courtesy of Jim Dow.
I am Julie Blim, and I'm going to read a reflection that Barbara Hatfield, a New York City artist, wrote to Laurel. But first of all, I want to say that Laurel meant so much to my husband and I. Everything we knew about art, introducing us to Walter and to many others, came from Laurel. She was a wonderful teacher and just a wonderful person with so much caring. So Barbara writes, Dear Laurel, I feel your absence acutely. At the same time, I've so many memories from the many years we knew one another. You served me spaghetti with fresh peaches at your house. Your custom clothing, always impeccably dressed. Our shared love of books, and more books. The many wonderful treasures you chose for the gift shop. By the way, these earrings are from the gift shop. The yellow iris at McKenna House. Your writing and gardening, your faith in and support of my work, inviting me to curate a show from the collection and design the installation of an exhibition for the museum immediately following the spring flood of 1997. Enjoy it. It will be your only chance, you said, only half teasing, wanting the help, but being territorial about your space. But years later, you booked a drawing show from New York City, and then came Meditation for the Hand, which I co-curated for the museum with Hanny Tierney. You're visiting one of my exhibitions in New York City and being instrumental in 2 commissions of my work, making time to listen and peppering me with questions when I drop by your office on my visits home. Providing example for me and so many others of a life fully and happily integrated with art. Your lovely, welcoming voice. With gratitude for all, I'll miss you always. Barbara, and then she adds, and I forgot the the peonies. Such a lovely, lovely part of a remarkable legacy. Thank you, Laurel.
Hello. My name is Crystal Alberts. I'm a professor of English, and just a few years ago I stepped down as the director of the UND Writers Conference, which is a position that I had the privilege of serving in for about 15 years. I began that position in April 2009, and I heard around the way that the Writers Conference always cooperated and collaborated with the museum. So I was recently arrived at UND, and I marched myself right on over to meet Laurel. I didn't know anything about her, and I did not do my research. I sat down, and I proceeded to explain what I would really like to have happen with the Writers' Conference and the North Dakota Museum of Art. And it took me exactly 2 seconds to understand that Laurel is fierce. Sometimes you might be afraid, but she was a force. And I realized immediately that if I was going to be the leader of an arts organization in Grand Forks, North Dakota, I needed to be like Laurel. She was an inspiration and an example, and we, I think, came to a mutual respect, and we worked together for many, many years. But what I didn't realize when I was younger, I'm not going to say that I was young, but when I was younger, is that I was actually sitting across from one of the earliest directors of the UND Writers Conference. In 1973, John Little, who did found the Writers Conference along with Bob Lewis and many others, Jim McKenzie, Michael Anderegg, apparently they decided to have a conference that was all women. And as Laurel told it, well, John just couldn't handle all the women, so he turned to me, it included Gwendolyn Brooks and Carolyn Kaiser. He turned to me and said, "You handle it." I did not prepare remarks today, but I saw the picture of Miriam Patchen and Laurel. And that art exhibit in the Union, which no longer exists but has been replaced, was the same year as the Beat Generation. There's a very famous photograph that floats around that has the entire Beat Generation, and Laurel is sitting right in the middle of it. That was the first time that the Beat Generation had been brought together since the Gallery 6 reading, basically. And during that, in all of his colorful comments, which you can see online, Gregory Corso, and believe me, there were a lot of colorful comments. I've heard about the stories of the parties, mostly from Laurel, and some of you who may also be in the room, I will not disclose who you are. Gregory Corso said, "You know what this state really needs? It needs an art museum." And if I recall correctly, the art museum was founded in 1975. He said that in 74, and she was already well underway. So I just wanted to take a moment to acknowledge and recognize that over the course of those 15 years directing the Writers' Conference, along with Jenny Tarlin and many others that are in this room, whenever I needed something, whenever I found myself in a position like in 2014 when the Union was double booked and I didn't have a venue, Matt and Laurel came through, because quietly behind the scenes, even though she never received the recognition for what she did for the UND Writers Conference, she was always there to support, and so was this institution. She also taught me that the UND Writers Conference, like the North Dakota Museum of Art, is its own thing. It is never about the director. The institution stands, and it is about the art, and it is about the literature. And so I just wanted to acknowledge all that she did and to say thank you to everyone here, to everyone who supports the arts and literature here in Grand Forks and beyond, and to Laurel, who taught me one or two things about what it means to be an arts leader in this area. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Craig Wallace. I'm Laurel's nephew from Columbus, Ohio. And I think I did not prepare any script today, so I'm going from the heart, which my wife is back in Columbus saying, "Don't do that, don't do that." right now. But at a young age, growing up in the Great Lakes area, I didn't get to spend as much time with Auntie Laurel as the rest of the family here, just due to distance. But I knew that Auntie Laurel was special because I had many aunts, but only one auntie, as she called herself. And at a young age, we just had such fascinating conversations and time together. And early on, in my college career, she always pushed me to say, hey, take some art classes, take some art classes. And so I ended up going into university and took some history of art right out of the gate. And I kept calling her and telling her, this is what I learned this week, and this is what I learned this week. And she would just elaborate more and more. And as I look back over that period of time, those 2 classes that I took in art were some of my favorite classes because the seasoning that she brought to it as we would talk and discuss just added so much more to me. I also learned very quickly with Laurel, be careful what you ask for. And we had to write a project during college for the whole semester. And it was to pick a piece of art and then critique it. And so I worked with her. We had to go to the local museum, and we didn't have email or any of the things that we had back then, today. And so very quickly I would send her my paper, and I would write it, I would mail it to her, and it would always come back thicker than what I had sent over, with just red marks all over it. And if you've ever seen Laurel's handwriting, it's absolutely beautiful. And I learned very quickly that she's not messing around in her critiquing of my writing of this painting. And so we would go back and forth, and it was just amazing how she would never tell me what to do, but she would always encourage me to explore and look beyond what I could see. And it was really fascinating. And so as I think a lot about her, from the plains to the world and the world to the plains, just how much what she did and how much she impacted just me. And I look at later on in my own kids' life, who were about 6 or 8 at the time, and then a young one in a stroller. She came to visit us in Columbus one day, and she said, let's go to the Museum of Art, local museum. So we had the chance to go, and the kids, our young boys, were, Dad, what are we doing here, right? What are we doing? And Aunt Laurel's like, I got it. Auntie Laurel's got it. And she got down on her knees, which was so hard for her in that world, and we'd walk up to a painting, and she would kneel down, and to the young age of boys 6 and 8, would make this painting come alive. And it was unbelievable to see her love for art and the mediums and what was happening just come through and sing in terms of that. And so painting after painting after painting, we went through, and the boys were just fascinated, and I was just loving to watch all this happen and their questions and what was going on. And we finally turned a corner, and we walked into the Hall of Nudes. And at that point, the boys' eyes just went wild, and Laurel looked at me and she said, well, if you don't raise them in a farm or you don't take them to the art museum, they're not going to learn about life, right? So always a good memory that I have of Auntie Laurel. But I think as she will look here today, she's impacted, touched many of our lives from not only locally here across the country, but across the world. So thank you all for coming and helping us remember her today. Thank you.
I'm going to take a risk too. My name is Jim McKenzie, and I just want to, I came to the podium to say one sentence from Laurel that she said to me, and I'll set the context. I'll try to be brief, but I warned you, I'm speaking from my heart. Matthew mentioned at the beginning, when he would get lost on campus, he would come to somebody named Elaine to find where he was, and that was my wife, Elaine McKenzie. And she worked at the museum there when it was not a museum at all. We've had a lot of history here, but it was the student art gallery. And so I've known Laurel for a very long time, from my first years here in 1971. Elaine was celebrated here after her death in 1996, the first time there was a memorial like that here. So Elaine and I were deeply intertwined with Laurel. And the sentence I want to give is the following, more than a year after Elaine's death, I was talking to Laurel and I said, I was really lost for a good while. You should all be lost in our lives at different times, and we probably all are. I said, I think I've found my path now. And without a moment's hesitation, and with the ferocity that has been mentioned several times, started with Walter Piehl, she said, it's not a path, it's a meadow. And Laurel is right. It's not a path, it's a meadow. And we're all playing in that meadow, and we always will. Thank you.
Okay. If anybody, this is your last call, if you have anything to say. If not, we're going to invite up our last remembrance speaker, Cindy Lindquist, and followed by a reception. So please stick around afterward. Thank you all very, very much for coming here today.
Before I put on my Dakota hat, I want to speak and just say a moment as Cindy or Cynthia Lindquist, proud graduate of UND, because I want to remind everybody at her retirement a couple of years ago, we all made a promise, a pledge, that she really didn't want nothing to do with. But we live in this world, which is a capitalist economy. So please give to the Director's Fund for the North Dakota Museum of Art. $1, $10, whatever. Ask your family and friends. I want us to get to $1 million. And you've all heard why. Okay. How mitakia dapi. Chante washte na peche yuzapi. Heyosh tashunka wika wichakpi we emakiapi. Bade naji oyati edwati. Damakota. Greetings, my friends. I welcome and greet you with a warm handshake from my heart. My Dakota name is Star Horse Woman, and I come from the Spirit Lake tribe, just down the road a little bit. I am Dakota. I'm also Scandinavian, Lindquist, and I have grown up and lived in both worlds. Laurel grew up in Tokyo, North Dakota, which is on the Spirit Lake Reservation. I grew up in St. Michael, North Dakota, on the Spirit Lake Res. Tokyo and St. Michael are two of our community districts. I met her professionally as an undergrad student way back in the 1970s and acknowledge my teacher, Dr. McKenzie, my advisor. When you have those aha moments, both in life and as a college student, oh, this is what this is about. So I've been blessed to be a product of the University of North Dakota. People like Professor McKenzie, I'm just so grateful and honored I can be here today. And I don't normally write out my talks because I shared my Dakota name, Star Horse Woman. My grandpas and grandmas and aunties and uncles who are all gone taught me, you say your Dakota name out loud. You must also share and tell people and who you are. You're speaking from your heart. And as I speak from my heart, it's my truth, as I know and as I understand it. I've come up through the ranks, living in both cultures and both worlds. I do identifying being Dakota, Damakota, and a Dakota Wea, a Dakota woman. And in my journey, we have a saying, Daku wakanskaska. Daku wakanskaska. Something holy moving. And when you say that, usually in ceremony, and it's really about life. It refers to life as a human being. I've been blessed. This lady, our Laurel, my Laurel. I see her and understand her as we are, waka skaska. A woman wholly moving. She was my professional colleague. She was my mentor. She was my role model. And in my way, in being Dakota, she was my mashke. Mashke means sister friend. So it implies this thing called relationship and a status. So it's more than friend, it's more than professor, teacher, colleague, mentor. It established that familial, that family tie, that bond. She showed me many things and how to be a leader. And many of you have articulated that. She was very respectful. She was very humble. She showed me in her leadership how to stay grounded, how to always be rooted in who you were and where you come from. She showed me how to always be kind. And in that kindness, so much generosity, so much compassion. I'm going to be the first person to say, I really don't know anything about art. And I can't draw. Through Laurel's eyes, as her nephew just articulated, she helped me to see beauty in almost everything I shared with her and that she shared with me. Whether it's a show, whether it's words, music, and how this all ties us together, binds us together. Through her work, she brought forward truth. She brought forward the relevance, the importance of art, of music, reading, poetry, and how those things help us to understand, help us to be calm, help us to see beauty. Meshke Laurel demonstrated fortitude, resilience, by bringing us together to see through each other's eyes. I also see her as Wia Akichita, a woman warrior. She showed us how to be brave. And somebody used that term, fierce. You know, she was, but in that, it was so tempered. I am blessed to have known her, to have worked with her, to have learned from her, to have walked beside her. She showed me how to live life well. And to me, she does embody this Wia Wakaskaska, woman holy moving. She was always a good relative. In recognition of that journey, and to honor our relative, our friend, in Dakota way, when our relatives leave us, we say they go to that star camp. And you know she's up there giving orders and rearranging things, right? But she's joined her relatives now. They've welcomed her. And when Matthew let me know, I shed tears. But sadness, yes, but also joy. I got to know her. And hopefully I can emanate some of her as I continue my journey. But to send her off with all of us here, all of us who love her, I've asked my relative, my cousin from Tokyo, North Dakota, Andy Demarce. I'm going to smudge, and Andy is going to sing a memorial, a happy song, but a remembrance song for her journey. And I encourage you all to think of it that way. She's been gone now, but she's still on that journey, settling in that star camp. And we all wish her well. We also acknowledge that someday we're going to join her. We're going to be with her in that star camp. And we want that to be a good thing, because it is a good thing. So hopefully we continue her teachings to us, to be a good relative, to walk this world in a good way, in a heartfelt way, and to really recognize and honor her legacy here on this campus, but us as her relatives, those who are left behind. So I say, Nina Wupida, Nina Padamia, Mitaki Awasi. Thank you. We are all related. So, Andy? We also, you can all stand if you want, but you don't have to. The way I've been taught in ceremony and prayer, we don't want it a thing and uncomfortable. We want you to be comfortable. So stay seated if you're more comfortable being seated. And think of our relative, our Meshke, our sister friend, and her journey as we sing this song.
Aho. My name's Andy Demarce. I come from Miniwakan Oyate, Spirit Lake Nation. I come from a small community called Habade Cha Wood Lake. And that's where Laurel came from, and her brothers, her nephews, called Tokyo. Not Japan, but Tokyo, North Dakota. I was asked today to come, and my sister, relative, Cindy, it was an honor for me to come today and sing a farewell song for Laurel. I didn't know Laurel because she was way older than I am, and she was I was way born late, and she was, but I knew Russell, and my dad knew Russell, and he knew his brother Glenn. My dad always told me, one day, Andy, they're going to be calling upon you for honoring, like for graduations, weddings, memorials. So I'm here today to sing a farewell song for Laurel. And like Cynthia said, it's our way, like standing, like in Najipo, stand up and honor her and her spirit today. The song's a farewell song to her, too, also. I hope, it's a farewell song for Laurel, and may her spirit live on. I hope.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you, especially, I want to say thank you to Sarah, who joined us all the way from San Francisco to provide music for us today. If you knew Laurel and her music, Sarah was by far her favorite pianist. So this isn't the first time she's been here to perform for Laurel. Please join us, the family and friends here in the back. We're going to have refreshments and plenty of it. So please stick around and continue to help us celebrate Laurel. Thank you all for coming.